So here we have our jacket, and we've got the lining sewn in down the front. So it's only at the moment it's only attached down the front onto the front facing, and now we need to set the collar in. So we've already made up our collar and we've given it a press, and we've sewn the ends of the collar so that we still have the seam allowance free. So you need to stitch that and stop where the stitch line goes, starts to turn the corner. So you've got a 6mm seam allowance here. Don't sew all the way to the end. If you have, you can unpick it now at this stage. So what we need to do now is on our neckline, on both the outer garment, and this is where the corner bits are. We need to support those corners so that we can open them up. So what we're doing is we're actually just doing a stay stitch around the corner. It's about 1.5 to 2 centimeters stay stitch, and then so that we can clip into the corner, and so that when we sew our collar in place, we can actually twist this seam around and it will sew around the corner. So that's all I'm doing now. I've already done one. I just have to do the other 3. So each of these 4 corners needs the same sewing done, the same stay stitch. So just put and remember it's a 6mm seam allowance as well. Oops, switch the machine on, that will help. So make sure that when you turn the corner, the stitch line continues to be 6mm from the edge. And if it's not 6mm, unpick it and do it again, because we only have 6mm seam allowances on the neckline and the collar, and they have to stay the same. And if you need to, just use manipulate put the needle down and use the hand wheel to get it in the right position. And then our last one, which is here. Okay, and then once we've done those 4 corners, we just need to snip into each of the corners. And so it should be a distinct corner here as well. Don't just sort of like sew a curve around. Make sure that it's a distinct corner that follows the edge of the fabric. Mm-hmm. All right, so this is a little bit tricky, this one. But keep in mind that it seems a bit weird because you're used to putting, like when you sew, to put the right sides of the fabric together. So it's tempting to put the top of the collar against the outside of the garment. But remember, when the garment actually is finished, it's the under collar. Like when you lift the collar up, it's actually the under collar that goes against the outer garment. So when you pin it in place, the under collar is the one that goes. And a good way of looking at it too is that because you've got this seam here, this seam for the under collar matches up with the centre back seam. Okay, so you can put a pin in there. If you have a pin in there, that's a good place. That'll help keep the collar sort of centred. Yeah.
So you've just pinned the centre back.
So pin the centre back in onto the centre back seam. So the centre back of the under collar to the centre back seam. And then you've got the notches here, so that notch will match up with the shoulder notch. This one here is where we sew it in and we turn the corner around here. And we need to actually start, that means though that we need to start at this point here, which is the peak of the collar and the peak of the lapel. So we need to, and it's a little bit tricky, but we need to line up this stitch point here with the stitch point there. Okay, so once you've got that point there sitting directly on top of that one, you make sure that you fold, like all of the excess, so you've only got the 2 layers here. Okay, so it's just those 2 layers that you're dealing with. So it's the neck edge of the collar and the neck edge of the garment. Mm-hmm. And because we're sewing the under collar, we're sewing it to the outer garment here. So you can put a pin in there if you like to help hold it in place. And we're going to sew to the corner, and then we're going to pivot around and then sew to the centre back.
Great.
All right, so just even though we've pinned this, make sure that you've got it in place when you put it under the foot. And we might need to just roll it down a little bit.
Yep.
Help. All right, so remember that when you're sewing here,
I might, sorry, can I put it at the front?
is that
I know it's a bit awkward, a bit more light. Yeah, cool, that's great.
cool? All right, so right in at that point, put the needle down and then do a back tap. And we're going to go up, and this corner here, the pivot's open, you can see that it's lined up with the corner of the stitch line here. So we're just going to go to that corner. And then once we get into that corner, lift the foot up if you need to, and then twist around on that corner. And because you've cut into that corner, you should be able to just pivot around and line that up. So then give this a little bit of a pull. Because the bias, the undercollar is on the bias, you'll be able to give it a bit of a pull and stretch it to line the seams up. Just around here to the centre back. And then we'll do the next section. So probably a good idea before you just start sewing is to line up these other corners here. So we've got that's the peak of the lapel there, it's the peak of the collar, and this is that same point right in here, which lines up with that point there. So again, line those 2 points up, so they're right on top of each other, and then stick a pin in there to hold those 2 points together. Oh, that's a very big pin we've got there. Alright, so keep going here. And probably with this, because the undercollar is a little bit smaller, maybe work towards like knowing where this is going to. Maybe just doing one section at a time when you're sewing. So we're just working towards this corner here. So then you can give the neckline and the undercollar a little bit of a stretch to work to this point. Then when you get to the point, make sure that your needle is right down where you've opened it up, and then you can just twist around, twist the collar, make sure that it's sitting flat there. Raw edges together, and then we're going and just have another look at this, make sure that all of the excess is out of the way here. And you've got that point sitting right on top of the other point there. And make sure that you only stitch, and take the pin out and you can sort of just hold that in place there. And don't go past that point with back tack. Okay, and then you've actually held that point together. So now I'll just turn this over, take my pin out of the centre back there, and pin out there, and we'll just check. So we'll turn this over, and you can see when we fold this through that we've got the collar attached there. This is just on the outside at the minute. Attached there, we've got our corner around through the centre back, our other corner here, and then we stop back at this point here.
Great.
So that's our undercollar attached to our outside body of the garment. And if you have this bit here where you actually can see the stay stitch, you can just, because you didn't back tack at this point, you can just stick your snips in there, and provided you've done a good job on the corner, you can just pull that stay stitch out and get rid of it.
Great.